Hey, what's going on, everyone? Jarrell Solis with Confidence Pest Control. And as always, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in, listening to what I have to say. And I especially want to say thank you to everyone who's reached out to me. It's been a tough week. I lost my grandma. Very close with my grandma. Um, but I've had a lot of people reach out, and subscribers, guys that follow me on Facebook and stuff, they know. But I've also had people that have reached out just to talk shop, and that's been great. I want you guys to know that I get just as excited to talk to any of you that are subscribers or followers, and as you do to talk to me. It means the world. So thank you for all the love and support. I just want to say thank you for all that. But it's a beautiful morning out here, Saturday morning. We've got some, you see 3-2-3, some football for my son this morning, or later on this morning. But I have some time. We're at the end of September. The mornings are starting to be really nice. And so I'm just doing some front porch sitting. I love being on my front porch, and I thought I'd make a video. This one is going to be just about the roller coaster that is entrepreneurship, the feelings of entrepreneurship, and just everything that goes with it, and how it's entrepreneurship in itself is a roller coaster, just like life is, right? And I'm gonna go back a little bit to just tell you guys the range and mix of emotions that I've felt through my entire life up to now, and how it correlates with entrepreneurship. So you guys are just gonna get to know me on a very personal level. I just want to let you guys know who I am, what has made me today. The life that I've lived that's kind of shaped me into and to where I'm at right now. So, and I'll tie. Again, this is really to show you guys the amount and the range of just emotions and feelings that I've gone through, and I know you've all gone through as well. I don't think that my story is special, but nonetheless, I'm going to tell it anyways. So, like I said, we're going to go back to who I am, as a kid, and I grew up in a small Central Texas town, very predominantly white. There wasn't much color, brown or black. And I say that because it plays a part later on. But my mom was very rich in love. We didn't have much at all, but my mom always made sure to tell us that she loved us. My pops was a good pop for a long time, He for the first 8-10 years of my life, he was a really good dad. Something switched, I don't really know, but him and my mom, they ended up splitting up. But I remember, and this feeling's kind of stuck with me for even now. I'm dealing with it now. People talk about childhood trauma, and it sticks with you. It really does, because for me, I've always felt that I was just never enough. Right? I've always felt that way. Because my parents would drop us off at my grandma's, and they wouldn't spend the time with us, and they would rather be with their friends and hanging out and doing things and spending time with their kids. And they wouldn't get their stuff together to take care of us. And it's like, well, as an adult, I say that because I do everything I can for my family. But it's like, why wasn't I enough for them to want to make those changes back then, And there was plenty of times when my mom wouldn't come to my games, not because she had anything to do particularly, she just wouldn't make it. Maybe it was hot or something, so I wasn't good enough. My dad, after they split up, he would come to see us, but he didn't spend any time with us. It was just to see my mom, and so it was always I wasn't good enough. In school, I was treated differently because of the color of my skin. Don't let anybody else tell you otherwise. Where I grew up, what you look like was a big deal. It wasn't until later on that I started getting treated like an equal, and that's just because I had to become just like those other guys. But they treated us like we weren't, like we were second class citizens. I can remember feeling anger because when I was 12 years old, I was racially profiled. The cops pulled up to me and two of my cousins, and they said, "Hey, that we fit the description of a crime that was committed about 2 miles away on the other side of town, just minutes before, where a group of about 8 or 9 kids that were wearing dark clothing beat up and stole a bike from a kid. The only thing dark about us was our hair and our skin, because we were wearing white t-shirts. I can remember that day because it sticks with me. I was wearing a button-up shirt over it. I took that off so that I could play catch and not get it dirty. So I was wearing a white t-shirt play in front of my house. And I remember feeling anger because for no other reason than being Hispanic, I was pulled over. I was profiled. I was searched as a 12-year-old kid. And I knew then it wasn't right, and it was the first, but it wouldn't be the last. I had a coach one time say "fucking Mexican." I won't say any names, but yeah, I don't even remember what I did. I don't remember anything else, but I just remember him shaking his head saying "fucking Mexican." All right. But I love football so much, I wasn't going to let anybody break me. I wasn't going to let anybody else get in between, me and what I love. So I continued to play. But yeah, I've experienced anger and loneliness, a lot of loneliness. I've experienced, heartache and sadness. Just so much. So much. I mean, in high school, I wasn't good enough for my girlfriend's parents, who was Mexican. They were from a different area, but they weren't like the other Mexicans. They weren't like, my side of the track Mexicans, where we were, most of us. I was one of the first ones. I was the first to graduate high school, right? Nobody before me had graduated high school, and they came from, they had a little bit of college experience. So in their mind, we were second class citizens. I wasn't good enough for their daughter, right? And again, that feeling of just not being good enough, it followed me everywhere I went. It was tough, and in high school, we actually lost a lot of people, a lot of high schoolers. I feel like that town's cursed, to be honest, because almost every year some high school student is killed. And when I was 17, it happened to be one of my best friends and his cousin, who was one of my other really good friends. They were killed. One second. Where are you going? No, you're all right. Love you. Sorry, my wife. But yeah, when I was 17, my best friend, he was killed in an accident, car accident. And I miss him to this day, Rest in peace, Daniel. That was September of 2006. And what's crazy is, the month before, two of my other, school friends, that I'd known for many, many years, one girl that I'd grown up with, Celia, never let her, I'll say her name so she's never forgotten, Celia Ramirez, and her boyfriend Josh Merrick, who was a football buddy. He played football for a few years with us, and so we knew him, and they had played hooky that day, and on the way home they swerved, overcorrected, and ran into an 18-wheeler, and it killed them. a few hours later on that same day, a football friend of mine, who had just graduated a few months before, he was a pretty good friend of mine, Andrew Ivacek. Rest in peace, brother. He was on his motorcycle without a helmet, and he turned it over, and injuries to his head, and he died that same day. So that same day, 3 people we lost, and then a month later, my best friend. And I've been to more funerals than I have weddings, or I've been to more funerals than really any other occasion out there in my life. It's sad. So I've experienced a lot of heartache, a lot of pain. I've questioned why a lot in my life. For many years, I lost faith. I'll be completely honest with you guys. I lost faith. I thought that because I'd seen a lot of the ugly side of this world. And again, it's just so many emotions that I have felt. And don't get me wrong, I'm focused. It's easy to focus on the lows, but there have been a lot of highs. There have been a lot of highs. Man, just as many. I mean, there's been probably a lot more highs than there have lows, but it's easy for everyone to focus on those lows because those are the ones that you really, really remember. I've won big games and I've lost big games, and those losses they hurt, man. I've seen friends get married and they're amazing, but I've lost friends, and it hurts. I've experienced one of the greatest feelings that I've ever experienced was getting to the top of the crucible of the Reaper is what it's called. And it's a mountain out there in San Diego in Marine Corps boot camp. You go through 3 months of basic training, and the last true testament is called the Crucible. It's a 72-hour, 52-mile hike with about 3 hours of sleep. I mean, it pushes you, right? And to top it off, you go through this, it's called the Reaper for a reason. I mean, it's a mountain that your nose is pretty close to the ground as you're marching up, and you're just humping up there, man, and it's tough. And then you get to the top, and your drill instructors walk around and they just congratulate you, and they treat you like a human being instead of like a recruit for the first time, and there's that true feeling of accomplishment, of real accomplishment, and I'd accomplish other things with football, because football was hard. Not a lot of people quit that, and so I knew the feeling of what it took to work, from your freshman year all the way to your senior year, to play on Friday Night Lights or to play under the Friday Night Lights. I know that feeling of what it takes, and it takes a lot, especially where I grew up, because we were a powerhouse at one point, and so back then, we worked hard. So I knew accomplishment, but man, it didn't compare to that feeling of making it to the top to become a Marine, because there are very, very few people that have done that. And so there's a sense of pride in that, man. And that's one of those highs. That's one of those highs right there. And then, a month later, whenever, you graduate, and I saw my family there, and they saw the transformation from me, as a high school senior to someone who just graduated, and then they see me as a Marine. And I had worked hard, and I lost like 30 pounds in boot camp, and there's just this incredible transformation and this confident level that I had felt. I was 5'11", 175 pounds when I graduated boot camp, but you couldn't tell me that I wasn't 10 feet tall and bulletproof. It was a feeling that nobody can ever take away from me. Being able to hold that Eagle, Globe, and Anchor for the first time, knowing that I'm a Marine, not a recruit, but I'm a Marine. That's one of those one of the highest points of my life, absolutely, because working through something so hard. And you know, and what I love about the Marine Corps was it gave me a true sense of confidence, and not just cockiness, you know, not a false confidence, but confidence, because confidence comes from accomplishing things, right? Whenever you accomplish something that you didn't think that you could do, that most people can't do, when you can do that, yeah, you're going to feel good about yourself. And I felt great because I did accomplish something that only 1% of the entire American population can claim that they've done, and that's become a United States Marine. Now, you know, there's a reason that they're the few and the proud. And so that was you know, a damn good feeling. Damn good feeling, you know, and because all I ever wanted to do was become a Marine. From the time I can remember on 9/11, walking home with my cousin Josh, and you know, school had let out and the towers had just fallen, and we were on the way home, we were walking, and I couldn't believe that America was attacked. And I was in I was in seventh grade. I was still 12 years old. I wasn't yet 13. But I was 12 years old, and I remember thinking to myself, you know, that, you know, feeling like I got punched in the gut because, you know, America was attacked. I said, no, I'm not gonna stand for that. And I told Josh, I said, hey, when I'm 18, I'm joining the Marines so I can go fight these dudes. Whoever it was that attacked us, you know, we're going to war, and I knew that, I kind of understood that we would be at war for a while. And again, you could ask him, you know, I told him that day as we were crossing, we were passing Subway, crossing over Highway 29 on Hill Street, and I told my cousin, when I'm 18, I will be in the Marine Corps, and I will be fighting those guys right there. And so, you know, again, we fast forward to the Marines, and that level, or that feeling, and that level of confidence that I had was through the roof. But then, you know, and I had gone through boot camp with one of my best friends, and so I'd always had somebody, a friend. And then after that, it was really a solo journey. You know, we split up, and we went our different ways. And he went to the East Coast, where I went to the West Coast. We had different MOSs, and that's when you really just do your own thing, right? And so that's when a very lonely feeling. You know, I was young, and I was away from home. You know, that it all happened in that same year. From, you know, I turned 18 in May. I graduated 5 days later. I left to Marine Corps boot camp 14 days later, and then 90 days later, I graduate from that. And then I'm at my MOS school. I'm doing my combat training, and then in December, you know, of that year. So this is all within a very, very short span of time, right? And then December of that same year, I'm being stationed in 29 Palms, and I'm on, you know, I'm completely on my own. You know, I get sent to a unit. I go from, you know, being that young kid to just having to grow up really quick. And it was my very first Christmas there, and I remember my Christmas dinner was a Hot Pocket and a Monster energy drink. Because I was on duty. I didn't have any family. I didn't have any friends there yet. It was just me, solo dolo, you know, just there, eating a Hot Pocket and just being sad, you know, being lonely. But it's what I signed up for, so I didn't, you know, I wasn't sitting there playing a pity party or anything. I just suck it up. You just got to do what you got to do. You know, I was at least, you know, there in the States, where I knew there was a lot of Marines that were in Iraq, and they didn't even have their, you know, anything. So I was all right. It didn't bother me too much, but I was always ready to go. I was ready to go because I had joined the Marine Corps to go fight for my country. That's what I wanted to do. That's the reason that I joined. And so you fast forward a year later to 2008, and that's exactly what happened. Literally December of 2008, you know, they had asked me, hey, you know, do you still want to deploy? I said, yeah. They said, all right, well, your number's gotten called. You're going to be going to a unit here, a different unit, a deployable unit here in a few months. I said, all right, cool. Later that morning, they came up to me. They said, hey, you're actually going to be going later on, you know, at the end of this month. All right, cool. And then I went to chow lunch, Came back, and my gunny, he walked up. He said, "So Elise, come here." And I said, "What's up, gunny?" He said, "Hey, you still want to deploy?" I said, "Yeah, of course. That's all I want to do." He says, "All right, here's your orders." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "You're going to 1st Battalion, 7th Marines, 1-7, baby, chesty zone." But yeah, well, he said, "You're going to 1-7." I said, "All right, let's go." So I went from, I was in a relationship at the time. I was just, things were good. I was having fun. I was having the time of my life, to be completely honest. I had already settled in. I had, good group of friends. And I mean, we were partying in Vegas and San Diego. I mean, I was, life was really, really good. And then I get swooped up back into the lonely stage, right? Because then I'm going to a unit where I don't know any of these Marines. And I get over there, and I mean, and that's a whole range of emotions in itself. You go from just living your life to now, I'm writing a will for my family, just in case anything happens to me, because I went from, just chasing tail on, and partying, to now there's not only, a chance, but there's a solid chance that I might not come home. I'm going to leave and I might not ever come home. And that people don't, you don't, most 19-year-olds don't ever get that feeling, right? You don't ever feel like, okay, I'm doing this, and yeah, you might take a car out or you might go out partying. Yeah, there's always a chance that something could happen, but to know that you're going into danger, right? To know that you're going to a place where people are actively trying to kill you and the other people that are like you, your other Marines. It's a sobering feeling. It's scary. To write a will and to write, letters to your little sisters that start off, "Hey, if I don't make it home," or if you're reading this, is because I didn't make it home. Dude, I mean, that it's tough, right? Writing those letters to your mom, writing letters like that to your dad and to your friends, saying goodbye to your best friends in the world and telling them, "Hey, man, if I don't make it home, my truck, I want you to have it." Remember me. I mean, you're just, most people don't experience that, but I did. And again, it's, when you're writing it, it's scary, and it's just like, man, I can't believe that this is actually happening. And you're there, and you get over there, and you suspicious activity is going on, and you hear stories, and there's people, and it happens. One of my brothers, Tevin from Hutto, Texas. I met him in the delayed entry program. We joined out of we had the same recruiter, different high schools and everything, but we had the same recruiter, and so that entire year we met all the time, and him and I had we had gotten really close. We were both football players, and he became a really, really good friend, really close friend, really good brother of mine. And in 2010, he was in Afghanistan, and he just didn't make it back. He had just had his girlfriend and him had just given birth to their son. I mean, literally just like within months before, and Tevin didn't make it back. And yeah, I mean, my heart breaks, because I lost a brother, but I think about his son, who, yes, he's got pictures of him holding him, but that's it. He never got to meet him. He never got to watch him. I mean, he's watching him now, but again, man, I've lost too many people. And I made it back. I made it back safe. I mean, maybe there's a piece of me, that's left over there. Just like you talk to anybody who's ever deployed, there's a piece of them that stays over there that you really never get back. Um, but I made it back, mostly intact, right? There's times when it's just feelings, but I made it back, thank God. And you get back and you see your friends, and that's another good feeling, seeing your family for the first time, and holding, get to hug your mom again and your sisters, and it's a really good feeling. Yeah, it's just good, but you go through so much from that, and you're still at such a young age trying to develop and trying to manage all these things. It's difficult. It's very, very, very difficult, because you don't know. I mean, on one end, you're at this age where you're this cocky, young guy who's a Marine, who thinks he's the baddest dude on earth, but you're trying to manage. Hey, man, at the same time, I'm vulnerable, because here I am, I'm tough, but I was just, I was crying as I wrote a letter to my mom, telling her that I loved her and that if I would never see her again, thank you for everything. And so, like I said, there's just so many emotions that you go through at such a different stages of my life I've dealt with, man. I have friends that were in college that they were just sleeping in, all summer long. They were sleeping in or going to work, and here I am just praying to make it through the next day, right? But again, there's just so much. I've gone through it all, and you with all that, with everything that I've gone through and everything that I've talked about, you just keep going. I mean, that's all life is. You just got to keep going, because it gets hard, but you keep going. And you push through, through the thick and through the thin. You push through. Some of these people don't know this, and I'm just honest with you. I tell you guys who I am. I got in a little bit of trouble after the while I was in the Marines. Again, I wasn't in the right headspace. There was a lot that I had going on in here that I was dealing with. And, I turned to drugs and alcohol. And I got in trouble. I got in trouble. A bunch of us did. And I got sentenced to a year in prison. And so, yeah, for most of you don't know this, I spent a year in a military prison. Well, I was sentenced to a year in the military prison. My time served was not as long, but I was there, and that's another lonely feeling. You feel like here I am. Just. I had served my country. I had done the things that I wanted to do. I was proud of who I was and everything that I had done. And then I made a mistake and I'm condemned for it, right? Everything that I worked for, I lost. All the benefits that I worked for and that I had earned, I lost. And I let my family, my friends, my Marines, I let everybody down. I let myself down. And, I was supposed to be getting out. I got locked up in April. In May, the following month, I would have been getting out of the Marine Corps, coming home. Instead, I spent the next 7 months behind bars. Trying to deal with everything, managing these emotions again. And you know, it sucks because I knew deep down that yes, I deserve to be where I'm at. You know, I'm a very accountable person. I make my bed, I lay in it. I messed up. I'm paying those consequences. I served my time. I did it. You know, I'm not bitching. I'm not complaining. I did my time because I committed the crime. I got to do the time, right? I didn't blame anybody else, but I was mad because there was other people that did the same exact thing that I did, and they just got a slap on the wrist. Some of them got to go do. One of them did 30 days, and then he got out with an honorable discharge, got his benefits, got everything. Same exact thing that I did, but instead I got sentenced to a year. I could play the poor me, I could do that, but I didn't. You know, it's like, fuck it, dude. Life, you just gotta play the hand you're dealt, right? You know, sometimes you're dealt a shitty hand, and mine wasn't as bad as other people. It wasn't as good as some people. You know, it was a shitty hand, but I made the most of it. I did what I could, and it sucks because here I am. I was a good Marine by all accounts, right? You know, I was a good Marine, but here I am, locked away like an animal around people that had raped and impregnated their daughters, people that had raped women and children, people that had murdered people, people that were, you know, doing life sentences for murder. You know, there was people that were, their release date wasn't until like 2199. This was 2011. Their release date was 2199 because of the crimes that they had committed. And here I was with them, you know, for a little bit of money, and that's because I was trying to help get some Marines the money that they deserved. And so again, it wasn't bad. I'm not a criminal, you guys. Yeah, but to be around people like that and to have to harden up, you know, it sucks. You go through a lot and it sucks, dude. It really does, you know, because you're just eating food next to somebody who is not a good person, and I don't stand for that shit, you know, and so I'm not okay. I don't condone that shit. You have to just be there, and dude, it's tough. That's all it is, man. It's tough to be treated, you know, to be in a cage. You know, I can remember my cell was from this fingertip right here to my hand right here. I have to fold my hand over. It was right there with a bed that was this thick, a toilet right there where there's a toilet and you have to brush your teeth, right? I mean, it sucks, dude. It sucks, but it is what it is, right? I did it. I dealt with it. You know, I did my time, but again, there's that feeling of loneliness and not being good enough and just letting people down, and just, it was tough. But one good thing came out of that was, you know, I started reading, and I just started reading, and that's when I learned the importance, and I really started to value books. And so even once I got out, I really took that's something I took with me, was just reading. And reading ended up leading me to where I am at now, but onto that path, because, you know, I read, and in December of 2021, you know, we fast forward, we can skip a lot, but, you know, but not to skip everything, you know. In that time, once I got out, I met the love of my life. You know, she was a light in a dark time, and she's just been there ever since. Actually, we met right before I got locked up, and she stayed with me through that entire process. She wrote me. I would call her, and I told her I was getting put away for a year, and she just told me to hurry up and come home. And I knew then that I was going to marry that woman, and well, I knew I was going to marry that girl. And that was in 2010 when we met, and um, it is now September of 2025. So 15 years, and I'm with the love of my life. In that time, she gave me two beautiful daughters and my son, my pride and joy. And so, sorry, I'm reading some messages. And I talked about the feeling of the Marine Corps high. That doesn't compare to the first time I held my baby girl, and then getting to hold my son, my pride and joy. Oh, that's my boy, dude. Oh, he's my boy. Then my little baby girl, my turtle dove, man. I've got my three beautiful, healthy babies, and for a long time, I doubted. I really questioned, my faith, and once I had my children, I really understood that, that's where I was at, and so they've given me the highest highs in the world. But once I had my family, I had something to really, really, really work. I said, I got to give them the life that I didn't have. I cannot let them live the way that I grew up. And doing that, and I was doing, well with all that. But in 2021, and that December, I had been doing Audible books all the time, right? And I said, I really want to get better about who I am, because a lot of the books that I read were knowledgeable and history based, and then entertainment. I read a lot of zombie stuff, but I wanted to read stuff that was going to make me better. I knew that I was already listening to stuff, so now if I could use that time to invest in myself and to try to make myself better, just personal development. That's what I committed the year 2022 to. Was personal development. How can I be the best version of myself? And so in January of that year, I said, all right, my goal is going to be 50 books for 2021. I'm going to read 50 books about everything and anything and everything, but just be better. And so I was just reading personal development, and I was starting to get better. I was starting to journal. I was starting to have a different outlook on life. I really was. And then I ended up reading Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, and then his quadrants of his money quadrant book, and it hit me that business ownership was the way to go, and that's the way. I was like, okay, I want to make more money. I want to be financially free, and how do I get there? And then on May 6th, 2022, I was in Liberty Hill, Texas, and I was spraying a home. I was treating a home. I was walking around with my backpack sprayer, and out of nowhere, just out of nowhere, out of the blue, I stopped and I said, I can do this. I'm going to start my own pest control business. I wrote it down that day. I finished that service, and I had my journal with me. I went back into the truck and I wrote down, I will give myself 1 year to learn everything that I can about business, so that in 1 year I can start my pest control company and have my best foot forward, right? So I wrote, and then I started writing down everything that I needed to do to get my licensing, and then everything for the business, the LLC, the insurance. I needed to do everything. So I started making that plan. And from that moment on, I just started listening to everything that I could, business related and pest control business related. And I was consumed everything that I could. I think that year I ended up finishing the year with like 89 or 91 books that I read that year and listened to, because I was just a machine, just learning everything that I could. And the day came, April 6th, and I launched Confidence Pest Control. And from that day, I talk about the spectrum of emotions that I felt all my entire life. Well, that was, from as far as I can remember back to 2023, and at the time I was I turned if I'm 36 right now, so I was 33. I turned 34 a month later. So for 33 years, I experienced a lot of emotion, and then fast forward to when we start the business, from 2023 to now, I've experienced that exact same amount of emotion in that short amount of time, though, because that's exactly what happens. Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster of emotions, right? You're going to have some really great days as well as some really low days. You're going to question whether it's for you. You're going to question whether it's worth it. You're going to be I thought that I had felt lonely before. This is a whole different type of lonely, because at least the other lonely, I could call friends that could relate to me and things like that. Entrepreneurship, there's not a whole lot of people that that are going to be able to relate to you. You're starting a business, and you're going to be one of those few that do that. Your friends, they're not going to relate. They don't know what it's like to have that seed of an idea turn into an actionable plan, and then seeing it grow and blossom. They don't experience that most of the time. You might get some friends that do, and that's great, but a lot of times you don't have that. A lot of family you have is not like that, and it's going to be hard, and it's a whole different lonely feeling, because then even your spouse who's with you, they're there with you, but nobody can relate to what you're going through. And so that loneliness is tenfold, just because nobody is on that same level, right? And so you're just like, man, I want to talk, I want to know, I want to ask questions, and I want to figure this out, but I don't know where to begin, and it's hard. And then you're gonna, you've given up everything, and now you're like, all right, well, now it's on me to provide the life that I want, and that my kids and wife deserve, and it's up to me, and I can shoulder that. But damn, dude, it gets hard. It's like, man, I only made one sale this month, and so that means I only have one customer this month, and so it's so scary, because it's like, fuck, if I lose this, then what do I have? I lose everything. It's not where I have nothing to lose. Now I have everything to lose. My house, my mortgage, the truck. Everyone's putting their faith and their trust into me, and it's scary. It is hard, but you keep going, and you trust in yourself, and everything that you've done in your life led you to this point, and you're able to handle it because you've gone through these things. For me, I've accomplished things, and I've gone through these things, and I've got through the other side, and if I can get through that, I can get through this. And so I continued to push, and one customer turned into 5, and 5 customers turned into 10. Those 10 customers turned into 25, and before you knew it, I had 50 customers. And I wasn't making any money at all. I wasn't even able to pay the bills, but I was able to pay some of the bills, right? And then 50 customers turned into 100, and I was able to pay some bills. And to this day, I can remember that first time where we had a payday. I did a big termite job, and I had done, I had a bunch of recurring, and we just had, we were just drowning at the time. We were drowning. And I came home one day, and oh my God, talk about one of the best feelings that I had ever felt in my entire life. Because I came home, I went to the bank, and I pulled out about $6,000 in cash, I came home, and I know my wife had been struggling, with the stress, and I came home and I said, hey, listen, here's this that's going to take care of the mortgage for the past 2 months. Now we can catch up on this. Hey, and now we can bring our van back outside into the driveway, because we don't have to worry about it getting repossessed, because now we can completely catch up. And me and my wife, we held each other in the kitchen for what felt like forever. And that's when I knew it was going to be all right. We held each other, and we cried. And we cried and we cried. You know, we just we held each other in tears. And it was the happiest and one of the best feelings ever, because it was paying off. It was that first time that we knew that what we were doing was going to pay off, and her trust in me was like no other feeling I'd ever felt before, because here was this woman putting her faith and her trust in me, not everything else, but in me. And you know, she was given, you know, the livelihood of our home, of our bills, of our car, of our children. Everything was on me, and I came through. I fucking came through, and that was a moment for both of us. You know, it was like, hey, you know, and it wasn't, you know, 1 month, it wasn't 2 months, it was, you know, we're talking, you know, 6-7 months into the business, and you know, again, we had been doing everything we could, but on that day we were able to catch up and to have a little bit more, to go get something to eat. And God, the feeling of relief, the feeling of joy and of safety and love, I owe it all to that woman in there. As she was telling me goodbye, as she came back in, as I smiled, I owe it all to her, because I wouldn't be where I'm at without her. Life had given me every chance to throw in the towel, to fold, to hang it up, and without her, I would either be dead right now, addicted to drugs and alcohol, or I would be in prison. There's no question about it. I had been going down a dark path, and my wife helped me out of that. She led me out of that. She helped me become who I am, and I won't say she made me, but she helped me to realize my potential. She helped me to realize that there was more than all the darkness that I was in. And because of her, I rose to the occasion. And that day, you know, that specific day, we knew that we were going to be all right. From then on, we trusted in God and in each other. And since then, we've been okay. We've been all right. We've trusted that everything was going to be all right. And when we get down, when we start to question it, it works out. And so, understand it's going to be like that. You know, understand that entrepreneurship is going to break you down like you've never been broken before, but it's also going to build you up like you've never been built up before. It's going to help you realize the true potential that you have in yourself. And because as an entrepreneur, it's your responsibility to grow that business. And understand this, your business will only grow as much as the owner. So don't ever think that you know it all. Don't ever think that you've got it all figured out, because once you do, you hit that ceiling, and your business is going to hit that ceiling, and you'll notice real quickly that you're not growing. That's because you're not growing. So be open-minded, be willing to grow, be willing to learn and listen, and understand that you don't know it all, because that's what entrepreneurship does. It teaches you and it changes your mindset. You're able to get into that mindset and be open and be willing to learn and be willing to grow. And it's going to help you so much, because you do those things and other doors open. Because when you're willing to learn, you're going to be willing to learn about something else that you didn't know about. And then you're going to go down that rabbit hole, and you're going to learn so much about so much, and then most importantly about who you are. For me, starting this business and then starting this YouTube channel and helping others, I've learned that, you know, for me, the fulfillment that I get is coming from helping you guys. I feel so purpose driven, and I feel so fulfilled when I get phone calls from you guys and messages from you guys, and I have the opportunity to help because I'm making a difference. I hope I am. And that for me is, oh man, that's it fills that void in my heart that I've always felt about not being good enough, because now I feel like, hey, I am. People are reaching out for me or reaching out to me to help them. It's amazing, it really is. I love it. And entrepreneurship, that's the beautiful thing about it. It does that thing. It opens up so many doorways and so many. You might start a pest control business, and this is the first, the beginning of the road. You might end up, 20 years down the road coaching life skills, because you've learned so much about pest control and entrepreneurship and life, and then this is the gateway, but you might end up down the road being a life coach for something completely different. But it all starts with this, it starts with this little seed of entrepreneurship. And I'm encouraging you guys to do it. It's scary. It's going to be fucking hard, man. It's going to be a road. It's going to be a roller coaster. Ups and downs and twists and turns, and it might break down on you sometimes. You might be stuck in one spot for a little bit, but it will keep going forward, and that's what you've got to do. You've got to keep grinding, and you've got to be willing to learn, and you've got to be vulnerable. You've got to be open and just willing to go to places you've never gotten to before, right? And I hear this quote and I love it, because everything that you want in life is on the other side of fear. And that's what I try to do. I see the things that make me uncomfortable and I say, fuck it, let's go. Because I know that, that's where I'm going to grow, is where I'm uncomfortable. So when you think about this, if you watch this and you think, yeah, I'm comfortable where I'm at, that's why you're not growing. That's why your business is not growing. You've got to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. I've been going on runs. I used to hate running, but hey, I'm trying to do that because it's uncomfortable. And if it's uncomfortable, I know that I'm going to grow because of that. That's just the nature of the beast. When you're willing to do what others aren't willing to do, you're going to grow. When you're willing to do what you weren't willing to do, that's when you're going to grow exponentially. So keep going, you guys. Because entrepreneurship, it's fucking scary, but it's also rewarding. It's going to be the greatest thing that you think you're ever going to do, other than, raising your family and being a father and a great husband. This is going to be up there with that. There's going to be so many highs and lows that you're going to get from it, and the highs outweigh the lows big time. So understand that and be willing to do it, because if you are willing, man, and you just keep going, consistency, man, the tortoise and the hare, right? Just keep going and you will win. You will fucking win. And to win doesn't say that you're a millionaire. I mean, success could come in a lot of different ways, but I'm going to tell you guys, for me, I am the happiest that I've ever been in my entire life. I am the most fulfilled that I've ever been in my entire life, and I continue to fill that cup. I wake up getting the opportunity to help others, to build relationships with others, with other customers, with other people in the community, with other business owners, my friendships that I've built. Shout out to Johnny and Jason, man. I talk to these guys regularly. Jason almost daily, man. We just call each other. He's quickly becoming one of my best friends. And it wouldn't happen without me being on this road. Same thing with him. Him and I wouldn't have this relationship if we had not both gone onto this road of entrepreneurship. I am taking care of myself, again, because I want to bring the best out of myself. If I want the best out of my family, I got to give them my best, right? I got to be the best version of myself. And as an entrepreneur, you realize these things. These are the things that come to you that you realize, all right, I can get better at this. I can get better at this. I need to be the best version of myself. I need to work on this. So I'm working on my health so that I've got a clear headspace, so that I'm a healthy body, and so that I feel good. If I feel good physically, I'm going to mentally feel good. If, spiritually, intellectually, I'm trying to learn. All these things factor in, and they help me create the best version of myself. And when you're the best version of yourself, you're happy. You're fulfilled. And I'll be honest with you fellas, I'm hitting a 6-figure year. I never dreamed of that. And here I am hitting 6 figures this year in sales. Not necessarily money that I'm making, but in sales. And I'm able to provide my family with things that I never experienced before. I'm able to do things that I never would have imagined growing up. I think back to myself as a child. If I was a kid and I would have met my children, I would think that they are the richest of the rich because of the things that they have. And not to say that we have a whole lot. We have what we need, and we're very, very blessed. But I have these things, and entrepreneurship has been able to do that for me. This pest control business has been able to do that for me. But financially and spiritually, mentally, physically, all these things, they all tie in together, because it's not one thing. It's a million little things. I say that all the time. And again, I'm just so happy, and I want this feeling that I have for every one of you, because it's great. I wake up and I'm just happy. I'm so happy to wake up. I'm so happy to be able to do the things that I do. My wife and I, where we're at in our marriage, we're at the best spot. We've gone through ups and downs just like any relationship ever. She's kicked me out the house before. We've gone through our ups and downs, but now when she sees me, she's all smiles. When I see her, I'm all smiles. When I think about her, I'm all smiles. She's the greatest thing that could have ever happened to me, and because of her, I have the other 3 greatest things that could have ever happened to me, and that's our babies. The life that we've built is something special. I don't take it for granted, and I want this for every single one of you guys and gals. Anybody who's watching this, anybody who's not watching this, I want this for them. So all I want you to know is that entrepreneurship is going to lead you down a path that you never would have expected, doing things that you never would have expected. But it's worth it. And you're going to be so thankful for it, for taking this leap into entrepreneurship. So understand the roller coaster of a ride that's going to be coming. Be prepared for it, and nothing can prepare you for it. I'm telling you that right now. You can know that the low days are coming, but nothing prepares you for a low day. Just like nothing prepares you for that feeling of those high days. But stick with it. Keep grinding. Keep going. Keep pushing. Take care. And as always, stay confident.